Welcome to the Evening Review. My name is Sohane, and joining me is a friend of the show, Mr. Olsen Kahiriri. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We have, for the first time in the history of our country, a female president. And naturally, there would be a lot of expectations with any new administration. What are you keen to see happen in the next, or the first, rather, 100 days of this Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah administration?
Oh, tough question. First 100 days. You would remember that when Hage Geingob became president of Namibia, the very same expectations that we are seeing today were looming around. New face. The guy got the best votes back then. Came into office, technocrats, best administrator, prime minister, best brains. And we give the man 5 years and another 4 years before his demise. May his soul rest in peace. The expectations were more or less the same. He was the guy who introduced the 100 days, the what, the engagement with the public gathering and all these things, with a hope that things are going to change. Now we have a current president, Netumbo. Congratulations for her to be appointed the first female president of the country, and adding up to the list of women president in African context and globally. You know, the West always tells you that you must have the gender balance and all these things, but they also find it very difficult to bring female presidents, prime ministers, and as the top person in their respective countries. So to answer your question, 100 days, you just see chaos. Chaos started already. Second day, third day, fourth day, just chaos looming around. Chaos in terms of the appointments, how people are appointed, and all these things. I've seen a lot of contradictions within the first day. President speaking of Swapo Manifesto, but doing things that are not in the Swapo Manifesto. One being the cabinet change, the structures of portfolios. That if that was a Swapo Manifesto, it would have come out in their manifesto, but I've paged it. Seen nothing. I don't know where she got the structures of the new government, because she speaks of Swapo Manifesto, but the actions are different. Recently, if it's not yesterday, a few days ago, she was speaking of she's not happy with the willing buyer, willing seller, land issues.
Yes.
This is also not coming out into the Swapo Manifesto. Government restructuring, nowhere in Swapo Manifesto, but she's taking the actions. So I don't know which one is which, but we still have to learn. But what impressed me a lot is when she moves around the technocrats as a firm rhetoric persona who wants to bring change, hope of empowering and alleviating poverty, moving around the technocrats. I know the viewers out there, most of the people don't understand how our government is structured. What is the duty of the executive directors that she has moved around? Executive directors, to my understanding, ought to be technocrats in that specific field. If you look at how they were shifted around, I would understand that she has a pool of a lot of them, because the cabinet is now cut. So the EDs, some will be left out, and I understand the bit of the challenge she was facing, because normally the EDs are having 5-year contracts, and most of those contracts have not kickstarted in the same manner. Some have retired, some moved halfway in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, like Dr. Umawindu who came now. He got a new appointment recently. He was just a deputy.
Yes.
So obviously, when he was appointed to become a full ED of National Planning Commission, that contract would have been for 5 years. So you can't change the contracts because it has financial implications and all these things. But my concern is how you move technocrats who ought to be special, skilled in certain ministries.
Yes, yes.
I would probably give you the swap between the Ministry of Health and Mines. Ben Nangombe going to Mines and Energy, and
Penda
Ifidi coming from Mines to Health. Health is being the second largest ministry in our country, which gets the biggest chunk of our budget. And I looked and I compared the qualifications, because that's where you take the technocracy experience from. Ben Nangombe holding an LLB degree, moving to Mines and Energy. That's why probably the Ministry of Health was suffering. You took and put a lawyer there, doesn't know about oxygen, heart surgery, and all these things. Now you are bringing a guy who has a master's degree in finance and economics to Ministry of Health, who has a degree in mathematics. So mathematicians, he works with calculus. Here we're talking about oxygen, social issues. How do we improve Karutura Hospital? How many beds we should buy? What drugs are important? How do we procure?
Before
the right
you continue,
documentations, yes.
Yeah, I just want to understand how this realignment of the EDs, to answer the first question now, how in terms of the expectations in the first 100 days, how it responds to that?
The chaotic. I see it very chaotic because, first of all, the ministries are now getting a lot of responsibilities because they have been trimmed. And one thing that we are not telling the Namibian people is a minister is a political head. It's not an executive director, he's a political head. You can bring Esperanza or whoever. It's just a politician, just talk, no execution. When you look at the Public Procurement Act, the person who's responsible for procuring the ministry department, be it health, education, or what, is the executive director. No one else. Not the minister. Minister can interfere. Like also in state-owned enterprises, the board can interfere with the procurement process. They can advise, but they cannot take executive decisions. Those are solely, maybe if there's new amendments to the Public Procurement Act, but now the ED is the person to execute. And I would believe that one of the EDs are promoted to become two. Yeah, one. Steenkamp was the head of Ministry of Education. She was the executive director. Now
before we go for a commercial break, just to conclude, just to land this plane on the first question.
Now this person must now take that industry forward. But she couldn't do it while she had the executive powers. I don't know what the narrative is from the president, what she's trying to do, and where we expect changes. I do not see anything as from now. But we'll see. We'll see as days pass by.
And very, very quickly, because I had interrupted you, you had been speaking about this realignment from having now what you say or what you deem a mathematician run the Ministry of Health and how you see it successfully functioning, very, very briefly before we go for a break.
You see, if the executive director is a technocrat in that specific field, that's what you need to put, not moving people. You see, we have this attitude ever since independence, moving failures, promoting them and keeping them in a structure. This does not ring the bell, because I was expecting that we remove the ED, we keep them there on the sites, assist the current ED, hand over the process, and bring proper new guys who, we have the people. We have the people at the university, we have the people in private sector. You bring them in order, if you want to change, if you truly want to change. But moving people around, I do not believe that we are going to change anything. Because the person coming from Ministry of Education, moving to gender, or from labor to gender, it's two different professions. What are you changing? And just after the break, as you rightfully said, I want to unpack the issue of Ministry of Justice and labor relations. We are mixing things here.
We will get into that. We will be back, but we have to go for a short commercial break. Please do stay tuned. Welcome back to the Evening Review. I continue my discussion with Olsen Kahiriri regarding now the realignment of ministries, which we've seen Her Excellency President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah had announced. We came from a structure of 21 ministries, speaking under correction. We've now moved down to 16 or 14 ministries.
14, sorry.
Yeah. Ministry of Education, basic education now is being merged with higher education, and then you throw innovation and sports and youth into it. You have mines and energy, and then you throw trade and industry into it. You have on this side Ministry of Justice, you throw the labor component into it. And then there's the one that leaves a question mark in my mind, is Ministry of Finance and Social Grants. And you ask yourself, where's the public enterprises component? Because you would think that it being such a huge responsibility, given that we have loss-making commercial enterprises, you would need some overseeing function. So what do you make of this realignment?
You see, if the president wanted to restructure the government, he would have come out clean and tell us how the new ministries are going to operate. I don't believe that anyone came to your shows or through the media and unpacked how the new government administration is going to operate. And they owe this to the general public, because the general public are the custodians, is the people who are going to receive the service from this new realignment. But it's not unpacked, it's not clear. And you are right to say there are certain components that are left out. If you look at the Ministry of Justice and labor relations, and people don't understand, there's a difference between human resources manager and industrial relation manager. Two different components. Now, if you say industrial relation, then it's the industrial relation managers aspects, which is labor issues that has to do with disputes, disciplines, and all these things. But where's the labor itself? That component is gone. And we don't see it anywhere. Because industrial relations has to do with policies. Implementing them, drafting them, and bringing them to the fore. But the labor issues itself, where are they? And job creation is gone. We don't see it. But the Swabo Manifesto is speaking about creating jobs, which the president is claiming to have to implement. Where are these jobs going to be created, through what? Because I remember previously at Ministry of Labor, people will log in, register there for their jobs to be shortlisted through the Ministry of Labor. We don't know what is going on. Then, as you rightfully said, public enterprises, we don't know where they fall in. We recently had the reckless Veiko Nekundi making statements of Air Namibia
Yes.
coming back. Now he's making those rhetoric statements in regards of Ministry of Works, Transport and Communications. So is that public sector, that parastatals now going to fall directly under Ministry of Works? That is your question now. Because one is not told what is going on with Netumbo's administration. We are not clear. I don't want to dwell into the controversy of the appointments, people where the public sparks are. I always want to debate or deliberate on factual issues. Now, I was saying about Ministry of Health having mathematicians
As an ED.
as an ED and having a minister that does not have experience in public sector. No experience in public sector, public health. Being in charge of a so complex and difficult ministry without a deputy. I don't know what is going on. Someone needs to tell me and let me understand what is going on. Then you now look at the education. As you rightfully said, the two education sectors are put together. Separations previously were difficult to run, both of them. Now you bring them under one roof. Youth, sports,
Innovation.
Innovation was challenging to the previous minister of youth and sports. You also bring it into that sector. So that sector has now three ministries integrated into one. And you bring an executive director of a failed structure. I would say it failed because education in this country, only an abnormal person would say it has succeeded, it has failed. People don't have classes and all. The person, as I have rightfully said, who was in charge of procurement, making sure there's classes and all these things, is now the head, the minister, to make rhetorical statements. And I've told you, here now we have a new ED. What is the ED going to do? The ED that is there is a replacement of the current minister who was there, because she was a previous ED. And that very same person just occupied that position because she comes from Ministry of Higher Education. Now, what are we going to fix? Here we are saying there was a guy, was it the ED of sports, who said when they started about the same Nyoma Stadium, they started with 20 million. 20 million moved to 50 million. Now they are talking about, later they spoke of 1 billion and later 2 billion of upgrading of this Independence Stadium. In the new budget, we are talking about 200 million allocated to upgrade of category 2 stadium, which is the highest stadiums, which is Hakika Stadium, Independence Stadium, and all these things. Now, have we departed from the promises made by the previous ED of the 2 billion to the independent stadiums, or only the 200 million to upgrade the stadiums? So we are not clear as to what these people want to tell us. And I was expecting that the president knew what she was doing. If she knew what she was doing, she would have come out clear. This is what we are going to do. We have done research in terms of SWAPO. We went on the ground and we realized that we are going to realign ministries. This is the research we have done, and this is the way forward. And this is how we are going to execute it. Now, taking over government and being all over the show and not giving us direction because we are confused. Me, personally, a person who knows and read a lot, does not know what is going on. Now, if I'm confused, well, how about a person who doesn't know this bureaucracy? So we are in a mess, because the knowledge now will be left not with the EDs, it will be left with the directors. So we're giving now the directors more powers, because they have the knowledge when it comes to executions of the government projects. Because the ED will just be sitting there in the office knowing nothing, knowing mathematics instead of oxygen and all these things. So this is the challenge that I see. And now we are expecting probably the president to perform in her first 100 years.
Days.
100 days. Now in the 100 days, we are already having issues with the budget. and I know politics. I understand politics 100%. This is a president who took people from the street who are not politicians and bypassed the politicians and appointed them as ministers. To my understanding, he has angered members of parliament from her own party, who was expecting that I'm in the list. I might be expected to become minister, and someone just jumped the queue. They are not at the rallies. They don't put placards into the street. They don't campaign. They become ministers. I think with the current president, they have created 3 centers of powers. Executive, which is in charge of Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah. SWAPO head office, Shaningwa. You don't come there, she throw you out. Parliament,
The
Sarah,
speaker, yes.
Kugongelwa. Politically, I know that Sarah and the president don't see eye to eye. Now, this is a person who's in charge of legislature, where the executive come and report. The very same executive of your own party, who you bypass and put street guys who are technocrats or whatever, bypass them to become ministers. Don't play with politicians. Politicians will deal with you in parliament. So for me, I think it's the right time to be alive, because I want to see how those non-politicians are going to present their ideas before politicians and how they are going to succeed. With now, this time around, SWAPO only having a small margin over the opposition. So it's interesting what is going to take place in this country. And from what I also observe is the controversy issue of MIDCO.
Yeah.
Where cabinet now have now executive powers. They have usurped the powers of the board of MIDCO. The board is appointed by the line minister, which is the Minister of Finance. They now are speaking directly to the institution, which is MIDCO, while the bureaucracy is different. They are saying, appoint this person. If you don't want, we are going to deal with you. Appoint this person. Now, what if the board accept that, okay, cabinet, you are too powerful. We are entering a terrain where the laws are not abided to. Or we are jumping channels. We are going to accept the cabinet resolution to appoint the CEO. But if this CEO fails, you don't ask the board. You ask the cabinet.
What happened?
Yes, what happened? Because the board is not going to be accountable to the CEO that the cabinet has endorsed. Now, and this is the cancer we have in this country, where we want to promote failures. That guy did what? That we want to keep him there. There are better people there in the street that can do a better job. Why do we want this thing? And trust me, Simata has his hands around all these things.
By Simata, you are referring to?
George.
The secretary to cabinet.
You see, when we speak like this, people don't understand what is going on in this country. But we, at least have an understanding. Who called the shots?
I want to leave it there, Commissar. Thank you for joining us on the Evening Review. We hope to catch you again next time. Have yourself a pleasant day further.
Thanks for having me.